Alberta Primetime with Michael Higgins.
Welcome to Alberta Primetime. Ahead tonight, collaboration to cash in on the Made in Canada defense strategy. But first, from the Premier announcing a multi-question fall referendum to the destruction of controversial pain and fever medicine, the return of EV rebates, and the uncomfortable spotlight on Canadian curlers at the Olympics. Let's kick off the program with our Primetime This Week panel. And joining us this evening, Ellen Parker, founder and CEO of Parker PR in Calgary, and Darren Krause is the editor and founder of Livewire Calgary. Good evening to you both. And let's begin with the Premier's televised address, a prelude to the next sitting of the legislature, which gets underway Monday, and it had a significant focus on what she calls out-of-control federal immigration policies.
The fact is, Alberta taxpayers can no longer be asked to continue to subsidize the entire country through equalization and federal transfers, permit the federal government to flood our borders with new arrivals, and then give free access to our most generous in the country social programs to anyone who moves here. The
issue of immigration was a key discussion point during last year's Alberta Next panels, and Danielle Smith wants Albertans to weigh in further, announcing an October 19th referendum featuring 9 questions, including whether the province should take increased control over immigration, another on restricting social services for some immigrants, and whether non-permanent residents should be charged a fee to access health and education systems.
I want you to know how confident I am in the judgment of Albertans on these and other delicate issues. Although there are some politicians and commentators that fear direct democracy, such as referendums, I do not. I trust the judgment of Albertans.
Now, some critics called the messaging politically calculated to make immigration a clear scapegoat for a multi-billion-dollar deficit ahead of next week's provincial budget. And as for the perspective of the opposition,
after watching the Premier's address last night, Alberta's NDP have this to say: cut the bull and call the election. The Premier is trying to distract us ahead of a UCP budget that will contain billions of dollars in deficits. She's trying to distract us from separatism, which she put on the agenda and is already putting our province at risk.
The government is also asking Albertans to vote on seeking constitutional amendments, giving provinces the right to choose King's Bench justices, abolishing the Senate, and allow jurisdictions to opt out of federal programs without losing federal funds. Ellen, I'll start with you. What strikes you about the tone of the address, and how do you see this going over with Albertans?
Yeah, I think it's going to be, again, very divisive. I feel like, her tone was quite directive. She seemed very confident in this approach. She did appear and tried to present herself as a listener, really kind of zoning in on the fact that she was just responding to a number of people's questions and interest in this activity through these panels that have happened through the province. It's interesting, I have a few new Canadians on my team who are absolutely amazing. So I had them kind of weigh in. And yeah, we kind of came to this conclusion as a group that she's trying to appear like a listener, but of course it's very divisive, especially around the immigration policies that she may be proposing. But she is saying it's up to Albertans ultimately, and whichever way it goes, it's our decision.
Darren, how do you see this batch of 9 referendum questions playing if there is also a vote October 19th on separation? Should the petition that's currently circulating be successful this spring?
Well, I think what we've seen from Danielle Smith's UCP government is a carefully orchestrated, deliberate path to creating and implementing a viable path to separation. And this latest salvo is another step in that direction. We've got the Alberta Police Force. We've got the Alberta Pension Plan talks. We've got this immigration policy. It's a setup ultimately for people to say, we're already this far along, we might as well go the full distance. And that kind of goes with the constitutional questions that are going to be asked as well. And what's worse is all of this is being disguised as direct democracy. And that's just a defense so politicians can say, this is what you asked us to do, when the reality is, how many Albertans are actually going to vote in this? Maybe 30, 40, 50%. So it doesn't reflect the will of all Albertans.
Okay, so Ellen, above and beyond this element of referendums, what kind of stage do you see this setting for the session ahead? And that's especially coming off the sitting in the fall that had its fair share of controversy. notwithstanding the notwithstanding clause.
Yeah, I agree with Darren. And I also think that it's really what she's trying to do is say, I'm a listener now. And I made this decision before, but now I'm asking you to show up and make this decision and weigh in. So maybe in her own, from her perspective, she's trying to come across as more collaborative, potentially. Again, like I said before, I think it's creating a lot of division.
All right. Now, sticking with provincial politics, controversial children's pain and fever medicine has been destroyed. It was back in 2022 when the government placed a $70 million order for liquid acetaminophen from Turkey because of a shortage of children's pain meds here at home. But by the time the first of the shipments arrived, the shortage was over. And while put to use in Alberta hospitals, it was also pulled from neonatal intensive care units because of concerns over the clogging of feeding tubes. Roughly half of the remaining 1.4 million bottles were eventually donated to countries like Ukraine, but the province now confirms the rest has been destroyed because it was set to expire. And the cost? $718,000. Now, the opposition calls the whole process a waste of public money. It should also be noted this deal factors into ongoing procurement scandal investigations by the Auditor General and the RCMP. But Darren, is this one of those situations where Albertans are likely to forget anytime soon? How do you see it factoring into the political dynamic?
No, this isn't one that Albertans will forget about, mainly because this is the poster child of the missteps, we'll call them, and that's being gratuitous to the UCP, the missteps they've made on this file going all the way back to COVID. As long as people are talking about Alberta's COVID response, they will bring up, oh, remember that time during COVID where we made that ridiculous purchase of kids' pain meds that cost taxpayers $70 million and none of it could be used? That's what we'll be talking about as we continue to dissect Alberta's COVID response for years to come.
Ellen, lessons to be learned here by the provincial government? What do you make of how all of this has played out?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, I think kind of the other side of that is it was, the intention was good initially. I do think that there are way other things we spent way more money on, and every level of government is absolutely at fault at overspending, in my opinion. I do think that this may be a distraction and a way for the opposition to, throw the UCP under the bus and try to paint them in a bad light as overspenders, which some people may think is slightly ironic coming from the NDP government. So just some other things to consider and kind of things that I'm curious about.
All right, time for us to take a quick break. But when we come back, efforts to encourage the embrace of electric vehicles and the buzz over Olympic curling. More from our Primetime This Week panel in a moment. Welcome back. What's old is new again. The federal electric vehicle rebate program is back after having been paused just last year.
With the cost of living crisis that we're in, anything that the government can do to help move this along, we see as a good thing.
Well, the federal government is hoping to boost EV sales. It's an industry struggling to hit the highway.
Canada-wide, 14% of all new vehicles are EVs, but what we're seeing in Alberta is around 4%.
Provinces like Ontario and BC offer rebates. No such incentive exists here, and infrastructure in Alberta remains an issue with only 1,500 charging stations province-wide.
If I compare that to BC, they're sitting well over 8,000, and in Quebec, well over 10,000. So fear around a range anxiety and ability to charge is problematic here because, frankly, there just aren't enough charging points.
The return of the federal rebate program will see buyers receiving up to $5,000 for battery electric vehicles and up to $2,500 for plug-in hybrids. Ellen, what's your read on the readiness, the willingness of Albertans to embrace electric vehicles? Is the return of this rebate program enough to jumpstart sales?
Well, I think it's realistic to look at, our landscape here in Alberta. We have many rural people working in rural communities. It's very cold here. Albertans like their big trucks. So the climate here is a bit different. And I think the philosophy with many of our conservative Albertans is that we don't want to have this extra spending, and it's not really the government's job to distribute taxpayer dollars. This is something that kind of the free market can manage and companies can invest in. So overall, I think when technology improves and it's more sustainable in cold weather conditions, there might be more appetite.
Darren, from a consumer perspective, do you ever see a day when electric vehicle sales lead the way in Alberta?
And no, largely for a lot of the reasons that Ellen had pointed out, but I'll tell you what another reason is. We just recently went on a little bit of a car finding journey. It was not a pleasant experience, largely because you can't find a new vehicle that suits the needs of a family like ours for under $40,000. I mean, I see some new vehicles that are around $80,000 to $90,000, and if you're looking for an EV, you've got to get one of the newer versions in order to address all the concerns that Ellen brought up. So unless that credit or the rebate is like $20,000, I can't see it having any impact on electric vehicle sales here in the province.
All right. One more topic. While the Olympics are winding to a close, Canada's still in the hunt for medals. One sport in particular has a lot of people talking.
I don't think there's ever been this much coverage in curling. Ever.
Ever, indeed. That is the voice of Alberta curling legend Randy Ferbey commenting on a claim by Sweden that Canada's Mark Kennedy gave his rock an extra illegal push. We can only show still images of Olympic action, but at least one video replay out there appears to show the competitor from Alberta poking the granite part of the rock.
It's so far from cheating that it's ridiculous, but it is an infraction. But that infraction is almost impossible to call.
Another Alberta curler, John Morris, has 2 Olympic gold medals to his name and is a former teammate of Mark Kennedy's.
It doesn't have really any impact at all on the result of the stone. And now at the world's biggest stage, it's kind of created a bit of a fiasco, which I think has been not an awesome distraction for a lot of the curlers.
A profanity-laced defense by Kennedy also landed Kennedy a verbal warning from World Curling, and he's since expressed regret over the outburst. As for what's to come from the alleged infraction as the sport moves forward?
I don't know what the answer is, but obviously you got to address this because it could get ugly in time. People are not going to forget this.
The Canadian rink, by the way, playing for gold on Saturday. Darren, surprised to see an Albertan in the thick of all of this?
Well, you know what, Michael? My mom always taught me that the ferociousness of your defense is usually commensurate with your level of guilt. Not to say that there was necessarily a touch of the rock. Not surprised that it's Albertan, but I mean, surprised in general that it's Canadian. We're generally a congenial bunch. But the reality is, the rule is there. The rule is a rule, despite what Canadian curling royalty wants to or how they want to view it. I was just surprised by the incident more than anything, and then equally surprised by the response.
Indeed. Okay, so Ellen, what do you see this controversy doing for the sport of curling?
To be honest with you guys, I'm not totally privy to all the curling nuances. However, I think it will become more memorable. People are talking about it, so it's kind of PR for curling in a way. Maybe they could create funny memes and use it in another kind of PR way. But to Darren's point, Canadians are typically very polite. So it's just a different situation for us.
We are polite, but we also take our curling very seriously. Darren,
apparently.
Beyond the curling controversy, what registers as maybe a memorable moment for you from these games in Milano Cortina?
Well, I am going to say that the memorable moment has not yet come, hopefully because we want to see the Canadian men's hockey team bring home the gold medal this weekend.
Yeah, that's the kind of the bottom line, isn't it, Ellen? Or what's your memorable moment?
Well, it would be today when McKinnon scored the winning goal against Finland in the last 35 seconds.
Yeah, that was a pretty close one, wasn't it? Okay.
Yeah.
Folks, we'll have to leave it there. We're out of time. Thank you kindly, and hope you have an awesome weekend. And Darren, get better.
Thanks, Michael.
Thank you.
Right now, Canada needs to do its part, and all of us need to do our part for Canada to improve our defense ecosystem, to support the Canadian Armed Forces, and really realize what Mark Carney's asking us to do, which is to step up and do our part.
With the federal government having now outlined its Made in Canada defense industrial strategy aimed at reducing reliance on foreign suppliers for the armed forces, a group of organizations has a strategy of its own, collaborating to secure a piece of the pie for our province. And joining us now, Brent Jensen. He is Senior Director of Business Development for Edmonton Global. That is one of the groups behind what's now being called the Edmonton Region Defense Alliance. Brent, welcome to Alberta Primetime.
Thank you for having me.
Okay, so why the focus on Edmonton? What makes the region unique when it comes to tapping into this new federal defense initiative?
Yeah, I think a lot makes us unique. I think if I had to focus on three things: proximity to the north. We are the largest, most northern city to service the north. As we look at Canadian sovereignty and security in the north, we are definitely primed in order to do that. Scale, I think the way and the scale at which we do things, initially in energy and then branched off into other industries. Largest manufacturer west of Toronto. We do more manufacturing than people realize. And lastly, innovation. I think this would be centered around the University of Alberta and the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology, the applied research they do. University of Alberta, home to CardTech, the only dual-use technology center in Canada at a university, focused solely on defense. So I think those are, if I had to choose three, those would be the three things that make us really unique.
You probably know this, but Edmonton was long known as the gateway to the north, going all the way back to the 1920s in Blatchford Field. Is this something of a renewal of that concept?
I think it always has been. It may have fallen off the radar, but most definitely. I think the push as we look towards some of this defense spending is how do we move product in and out of the north? If we look at Edmonton from a construction standpoint, home to organizations like Stantec or PCL, we build great things. We can move things efficiently into the north. Most definitely, I think there is a renewal because where we're positioned proximity-wise.
How big of a shift in gears comes with this for all the groups involved in terms of prioritizing direction? What's been missing to this point where collaboration is concerned?
Well, I think the collaboration point. I think Edmonton's always done great things. We often do it in silos or in silence. The real push behind ERDA was how do we build a songbook or a choir where we're all singing the same tune to some decision makers, making sure that our value proposition is known and it's really clear. And then how do we service those organizations, those SMEs in the Edmonton region that may not know, do I have a piece of defense? So how do I service the defense industry? And it's beyond tanks and missiles and helicopters. It's about complete supply chains. So really the push was to combine our efforts, combine our value propositions, make sure it's really clear both to our internal community as well as to those external communities, whether they be prime contractors or governments.
What does coordination with the military look like? Because as most Albertans know, CFB Edmonton, Fort Wayne Cold Lake, Camp Wainwright.
I think in that respect, they're busy doing military things. With them, it's what are the businesses that we're working with? What products and services do they offer? Are they aware of some of the problems that CFB Edmonton might be encountering in terms of maintenance or efficiency? Can they provide solutions on the base in order to enhance the services that CFB Edmonton is producing?
What kind of infrastructure do you potentially see coming with all of this?
I mean, it's obviously Cold Lake is already on the books for housing the fighter jet fleet. A lot of that expertise in construction is coming directly out of Edmonton. We've seen enhancements or rumors of enhancements at the Edmonton International Airport for Mob West. That's housing the Husky fleet of planes. There'll be a lot of infrastructure there. So those would probably be the two low-hanging fruit. Yesterday, we saw an announcement from Prairies Canada for the funding of Zero Point Cryogenics, $5 million for their quantum services, as well as Logican in their sonar services, $1.5 million. So I think we see it on a large level in terms of big infrastructure, like we see at the airports, but I think we'll see that spending go into smaller enterprises that can most definitely service that infrastructure.
Okay, if this all comes together, and the hope is that it will, but what kind of sustained boost to the economy might this represent?
Oh, sustained boost. Well, that's a tough one. I think although we're talking a decade out for this spending, I think we need to look at it in tranches of 3 or 4 years. I think the sustained boost would be number one. The federal government is telling us that this is about economies. It's about there's $5 billion earmarked for small, medium-sized enterprises, and not just to sell and buy Canadian, but also to work with our allies for the export of that product, as well as trade to import new ideas and products into the Canadian market. I think this is the beginnings of setting a foundation of enhancing our capacity and expertise on a world scale, and ensuring that Canadian sovereignty is here and gets off on the right foot in the future.
Right. Any way of getting a read on how it might drive employment, even skill development, given the involvement of post-secondary institutions, as you were mentioning earlier?
Yeah, I think, one of our steering committee members is the Northern Alberta Institute of Technology. The solutions that they've provided industry in the past are definitely relevant and are needed right now. We've worked with a number of prime contractors and taken them through NAIT facilities who are saying this is exactly what we need, whether it is diesel mechanics for maintenance of engines or welders for manufacturing new products. NAIT is one of those suppliers that can provide that talent.
All right, one more question for you. Do you see any competition coming from Calgary? Or is there a degree of collaboration there as well?
I think the biggest thing is this is an alliance. It is about collaboration. Edmonton has a part of it. Calgary has a part of it. The piece of the pie here is so big that we don't need to compete with Calgary or any other jurisdiction across Canada for this. Calgary most definitely has the strategic assets that will best serve us for Canadian sovereignty and security, and Edmonton has ours. We want to work with them and every other jurisdiction across Canada to ensure that Carney's plan for industrial strength and defense spending is realized.
All right, we'll have to leave it there for time. Brent, appreciate your time this evening. Thank you, sir.
Thank you very much. Have a great day.
That's Brent Jensen with Edmonton Global. Now, here are a few responses to a recent story posted by CTV News about Premier Danielle Smith's address regarding immigration, access to social services, and federal influence over provincial laws and services. Tweed says, "Never thought I'd hear myself saying this, but I wholly support all issues cited by Premier Smith." That's old school conservative. Kathleen writes, "I don't know how anyone can listen to Smith and trust anything she says. Smith is nothing but a threat to Alberta and Canada." Marty thinks the kind of power she's seeking in this ridiculous referendum should worry both sides, Conservative, NDP, or Liberal. No government should have the power she's seeking. Blair writes, "Danielle Smith might be right in some of the subjects she's talking about, but I absolutely don't trust anything that is coming out of her mouth." And user says, "Do the honorable thing and call an election. The UCP never campaigned on any of these Trumpian policies." Have your say. Email us anytime at comments@albertaprimetime.com. That is our program for tonight. Have a great evening and a great weekend, everyone, from all of us at Alberta Primetime. Thank you for watching, and join us again next time.